The hall was filled with powerful people. CEOs, politicians, journalists, investors, everyone had come for the Future Leaders Summit, one of the biggest events of the year. Bright lights, big cameras, and bigger egos. At the center of it all sat Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States. She sat calmly in the front row, dressed in a soft blue suit, hands folded, eyes focused. She looked peaceful, but everyone knew she was ready for anything, except one man, who thought he was smarter. Ryan Blake, a tech billionaire, CEO of a famous company, known for his arrogant smile and rude jokes. He was also the keynote speaker at the event. And today, he had a plan to humiliate Kamala Harris on live camera. Earlier that morning, Ryan laughed with his team backstage. She talks big, he said. Let's see if she can handle real pressure. His assistant looked nervous. Sir, she's the vice president. Ryan rolled his eyes. And I'm a billionaire. Trust me, no one remembers titles. They remember moments. I'm going to make one. Another assistant handed him his speech notes. Be careful, she whispered. The whole world will be watching. Ryan smirked. Exactly. Inside the hall, the crowd grew louder. People took selfies, posted updates, and shared videos of celebrities walking in. When Kamala entered, there was a soft hush. She didn't wave. She didn't smile for the camera. She simply walked to her seat and sat down. Graceful, strong, quiet. Journalists whispered she looks serious today. Another added, Ryan's gonna try something, right? Of course. That's why we're all here. Everyone sensed it. The tension. Something was coming. The host of the event took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest, speaker, the mind behind the world's largest tech platform, Mr. Ryan Blake. People clapped loudly. Ryan walked out with his usual swagger. Confident, polished, fake smile ready. But his eyes, they were locked on Kamala Harris. As he began his speech, everything seemed normal. He talked about AI, innovation, leadership, the future of youth. Then, he paused. He looked straight at Kamala and said, but sometimes, people in power forget how the world really works. They talk about fairness while sitting in palaces. They talk about justice with bodyguards beside them. The room grew quiet. Kamala looked up slowly. He continued, take Madam Vice President here. She talks about lifting people up, but what about her past as a prosecutor? How many lives were broken under her watch? A few people gasped. Ryan smiled wider. Is that real leadership, or just a good story for the camera? Now the room was completely silent. Even the cameras zoomed in on Kamala's face. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply looked at Ryan. He was enjoying this, like a child throwing stones into a calm lake. And then he pushed harder. Tell us, Madam Vice President, how does it feel to talk about justice, when you were once called the Queen of Convictions? People began to shift in their seats. The host tried to step forward, but Ryan held out a hand. I'm just asking honest questions, he said. Isn't that what democracy is for? Some clapped. Others stayed quiet. Kamala finally stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't smile. She simply walked toward the stage. The host offered her a mic. She took it gently. Ryan looked smug, as if he had one already. He whispered to his assistant near the edge of the stage. Watch this. She'll get angry. She'll lose it. But she didn't. Kamala stood in the middle of the stage. The room was silent. She looked at Ryan. Then at the audience, and then she said, in a calm, steady voice, you asked me a question, not about leadership, not about policy, but about shame, about my past, about my story. She paused. Let me tell you what you didn't know. The cameras moved closer. Ryan's smile faded slightly. When I was 8 years old, I was told I couldn't play in a neighborhood park because I was a black girl in a white space. When I was 12, my mother told me to speak twice as good, just to be heard once. And when I was 20, my professor told me law wasn't a place for girls like me. I didn't fight back with anger. I fought back with excellence. Now the room was leaning forward. You call me the Queen of Convictions. Yes. I convicted drug lords. I convicted those who hurt children. I convicted those who believed they were above the law. She turned to Ryan. Not men who ask tough questions, but men who hide behind money while others suffer. The air felt heavy. Even Ryan blinked. Kamala took a deep breath. Leadership is not a title. It is how you act when no one is clapping for you, and respect is not given. It is earned in silence. When you walk through storms and still stand tall. Now even those who were unsure began to clap. Slow, then louder. The audience stood. Reporters stood. Even those who didn't agree with her politics stood. Ryan tried to smile again, but it looked fake now. Kamala looked at him one last time. You ask me how it feels to talk about justice? It feels heavy. Because justice is heavy. But I carry it with pride. Then she walked off the stage. Outside the hall, social media exploded. Kamala Harris just gave the speech of the year. She destroyed him with truth, not hate. Now that is leadership. The video spread like fire. Millions watched it within hours. And Ryan, he stayed silent because the internet had turned on him, not with anger, but with disappointment, and that hurt more. The speech hall was empty now. Cameras were being packed away. Staff walked quietly across the floor, still thinking about what had happened. Kamala Harris had walked in calm and quiet and walked out as the most powerful voice in the room. But outside, not everyone was clapping. Some people were angry, some were jealous, and some, especially Ryan Blake's online army, were ready to fight back. Not with truth, but with lies. It started with a tweet, a fake video clip, only 15 seconds long. It showed Kamala standing silently after Ryan's question, before she spoke, but it didn't show her answer. The caption read, Kamala Harris frozen in fear, couldn't say a word, total embarrassment. #weak leader, thousands shared it, then millions. People who didn't watch the full video believed the fake clip. They laughed, mocked, posted cruel jokes. One comment read, she got put in her place. Finally, another said, guess being woke doesn't help when someone tells the truth. But those who had seen the full video knew the truth. They started commenting, watch the full speech before you judge. This is edited. She destroyed him with facts. Stop spreading hate. The internet became a war zone. Back in her hotel room, Kamala sat by the window. She could see her phone buzzing, thousands of notifications. Some good, many hateful. Her assistant Alina walked in. Ma'am, she said softly, should we release a statement? Kamala looked at her. No, but they're calling you names. They're twisting the truth. Kamala stayed calm. Truth doesn't need to shout, she said. It just needs to stand. Alina looked worried. But what if it gets worse? Kamala turned back to the window. Then we get stronger. Ryan Blake was in his private office now, watching everything unfold online. His assistant entered. Sir, her supporters are fighting back. Ryan shrugged. Let them. The fake clip is already out there. Most people won't check facts. He laughed coldly. I just gave them a show. The assistant hesitated. Should we post more? Ryan turned to her. No, not yet. Then he looked down at a small notebook on his desk. Inside it was a list, a plan, and Kamala Harris's name was written right at the top at the vice president's office the next day. Security was tighter than usual. Angry protesters had gathered. Outside, holding signs, fake feminism, you're not my VP. Step down. Inside, Kamala held a meeting with her team. Alina brought her new information. Ma'am, someone leaked a photo of you and an old friend from college. He's now in prison. They're saying you were part of his gang. Kamala took the paper. The photo was real, but the story was a complete lie. She remembered the man, Malik. He had once protected her from a group of bullies in college. Years later, he made wrong choices and ended up in jail, but she had never hidden anything. I already mentioned this in my book, she said. Double quotes. Yes, but they're twisting it. Kamala took a deep breath. They'll twist everything, but they can't twist who I am. Meanwhile, Amira, a young law student, watched everything from her dorm room. She had been inspired by Kamala for years, but now, her friends were sharing memes and hate posts. Did you see this? One of them said Kamala is fake. She couldn't even answer that guy. Amira stood up. She did answer, and she answered with more grace than any man on that stage. Her friends looked confused. Did you watch the full video? She asked. They shook their heads. Amira opened her laptop, pulled up the full speech, and pressed play. 20 minutes later, they were quiet. And now, they understood. Back at the office, Alina came in again. Ma'am, Ryan Blake is going to appear on a late-night talk show tomorrow. They're going to ask him about you. Kamala smiled softly. He'll do what he does, and I'll do what I must. Alina nodded, then hesitated. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why didn't you fire back at him on stage? You had every reason. Kamala looked at her. Because I wasn't speaking to him, she said. I was speaking to every little girl who looks like me. To every woman who's ever been talked down to. She paused. And because silence sometimes shakes the world more than shouting ever can. The next night, Ryan appeared on national television. The host smiled at him. Ryan, you really made waves at the summit. People say you shut the vice president down? Ryan laughed. She couldn't handle a real question. That's what happens when you live in echo chambers. The host nodded. Double quotes. Well, we all saw the clip. But then, something unexpected happened. The audience booed. People in the crowd began shouting, play the full video. She made you look small. Ryan looked uncomfortable. Then the host raised his hand. Actually, he said, we have the full video right here. He turned to the screen, and in front of millions of viewers. They played Kamala's full answer. Every word, every pause, every truth. The room was silent when the video ended. The host turned back to Ryan. Ryan's face was red. He tried to speak. No words came out. Online. People exploded again. He tried to lie, but truth hit back. Kamala didn't even have to fight. Her truth fought for her. Leaders lead with grace. That's why she's vice president. Ryan lost over 300,000 followers in 48 hours. His own investors began questioning him. He had planned to embarrass her, but he had only embarrassed himself. Kamala received a message. The next morning it was from Amira, the student who defended her. It said, you didn't just win an argument. You saved me from giving up on my dreams. Thank you for showing us that strength doesn't have to be loud. Kamala smiled gently. She wrote back just one line: keep going. They can't stop what they didn't build. But the storm wasn't over, because deep inside Ryan's company, someone was watching. A person close to Kamala, a person with access, a person who didn't believe in her anymore, someone who was about to betray her. The office lights stayed on late that night. Kamala's team was working overtime. Emails flooded in. Interview requests, hate mail, support messages, threats, love. Everything mixed in one storm, but through it all, Kamala stayed calm. Not cold, not careless. Just calm. She moved through the halls with grace, answered messages with care, spoke to her staff with warmth. But something was different, a feeling like a shadow moving in the light, and that shadow was already inside the room. His name was Jordan Young. Smart, polite, he had joined Kamala's media team a year ago. He handled her digital presence, video edits, uploads, social engagement. Kamala had trusted him. She once told a journalist, "Jordan is like my little brother. He works with heart." But now his heart was broken, and he had made a dangerous choice. Jordan sat in a dark room with his laptop. He opened a folder labeled Private Archive. Inside were voice clips, unedited speeches, private video outtakes, moments not meant for the public. He clicked one file. It was Kamala speaking to her team after a tough press week. "I'm tired, but I can't show it. If I fall, they'll say I was never strong. If I cry, they'll say I'm weak. If I rest, they'll say I quit." Jordan paused the clip, his eyes filled with tears. "Why are you so perfect, Kamala?" he whispered. Then, he shook his head. "No one is that perfect, not even you." He clicked another file, and dragged it into a folder called Scheduled Leak. The next morning, Kamala entered the team meeting room. Everyone stood. She smiled and said, "Sit, please." Jordan sat too, eyes down. Avoiding hers, Alina began the update. "Ma'am, our engagement numbers are rising again. People are sharing your speech at universities. You've been invited to speak at Oxford next month." Kamala nodded gently. "Let's keep our focus on service, not fame." Then the room laughed softly when she added, "And remind me to get some sleep. I'm starting to look like I work in a hospital." But Jordan didn't laugh. He stared at his hands. Guilt was eating him from the inside, but the damage had already begun. 2 days later, a popular political gossip page posted a video titled, Kamala Harris Meltdown. Private staff footage leaked. The video showed Kamala pacing alone in a room, talking to herself. "How long can I carry this? Why does everything fall on me?" Wasn't a meltdown, that it was a moment of human truth. But the video was cut, cropped, twisted, and the internet believed the lie. Headlines exploded. Kamala fallen apart. VP caught breaking down. Is she fit to lead? News channels played the clip again and again. Social media trolls danced with joy. Kamala watched it once, then closed her laptop. Alina burst into the room, panic in her eyes. "Ma'am, someone from our team leaked that. It's an internal file, not public." Kamala looked calm, but inside, something broke. She whispered, "Someone in this room betrayed me." An emergency meeting was called. Staff gathered, phones down, doors closed. Kamala stood in front of them. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply said, "When I trust you, I don't just trust your skill, I trust your heart." Someone here broke that trust. Silence filled the room. Eyes moved nervously. Some whispered, some stared at the floor. Kamala continued, "I don't need perfect people. I never asked for that. I only need people who stand beside me, not behind my back." The room stayed quiet, until Alina stepped forward. We checked the upload path. The file was transferred from Jordan's account. All heads turned. Jordan stood still. He looked at Kamala. She looked at him. Like a teacher looks at a student who disappointed her, not with hate, but with sadness. "Why, Jordan?" she asked gently. He swallowed hard. "I thought I was helping." Jordan broke down. I believed in you," he said, "but then you became untouchable. Perfect. Always right. You don't let people see you're human." Kamala walked closer. "And so you thought making me look weak would help me?" He shook his head, tears falling now. "No. I thought maybe if the world saw your cracks, they'd understand you more. I didn't mean to hurt you." She didn't yell. She simply nodded. Then she said, "If you wanted them to see I'm human, you should have asked me to tell them myself." Jordan dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry." Kamala looked at the others. "No hate," she said. "Only consequences." Jordan was let go, but before he left, Kamala met him privately. She said, "I forgive you, but leadership means carrying the weight, even when your arms shake. I didn't ask to be seen as perfect. I only asked to be seen as trying." The staff stood stronger after that day. They realized Kamala didn't lead with pride. She led with pain, grace, and invisible strength. And even when someone hurt her, she didn't fall. She rose. Outside, the fake news started to lose power. People began watching the full leaked clip and saw a tired woman fighting every day for others. A woman speaking her fears in an empty room, not for the world, but because she had nowhere else to put them. And people began to understand. Real strength is quiet. Real leadership is lonely. Jordan's video didn't destroy her. It revealed her truth and the world. They didn't laugh. They listened. The sun was soft that morning. Kamala Harris sat quietly in the back seat of her black car, looking out the window. The city moved past cars, shops, schoolchildren with backpacks, but her eyes were heavy with thought. Bleaked at the betrayal. The noise still, she hadn't stopped. She wouldn't stop. Today's visit wasn't for press. It wasn't for cameras. It was personal. She was going to meet someone she'd never seen before, a girl who reminded her of herself. The car turned into a small school lot in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't a rich school. The building was old, the windows a little cracked, but children's laughter filled the air. Kamala stepped out. No red carpet, no flashing lights, just a teacher waiting near the gate with nervous eyes. "Madam Vice President," the teacher said. I can't believe you came." Kamala smiled warmly. "You wrote me a letter. I read it, and I'm here." 2 weeks ago, the teacher, Mrs. Salma, had sent Kamala a handwritten note. It read, "There is a girl in my class. Her name is Anya. She is quiet, brilliant, but broken. Other kids call her names about her skin, her hair, her voice, and no matter how many times we tell her she's special, she started to believe she's not. She reminds me of the stories you tell. If you ever have time, even a few minutes, please come." Kamala had read it at 11:45 p.m., sitting alone in her office. And without hesitation, she had said, "Schedule it." Inside the classroom, 22 students sat at their desks. When Kamala entered, their eyes grew wide. They stood up all at once. But Kamala lifted a hand gently. "Sit, please. I'm just here to listen." She looked around the room, then spotted her, a small girl, sitting near the window. Big eyes, braided hair, shoulders pulled in. That was Anya. Kamala walked toward her. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Kamala. What's your name?" Anya looked scared. She whispered, "Anya, that's a beautiful name," Kamala said, kneeling beside her desk. "Can I sit next to you?" Anya nodded. The class watched as Kamala sat beside the quiet girl. She didn't give a speech. She didn't talk about politics. She just asked questions. "What do you like drawing? What makes you laugh? Do you have a hero?" Anya answered in a shy voice, "I draw birds. They look free. I don't like loud people, and I used to think you were my hero." Kamala's heart skipped. "You used to?" Anya nodded slowly. "But then, people on the internet said you were fake, and that you just talk nice for the camera." Kamala didn't flinch. She took a deep breath. Then she said, "Can I tell you a secret?" Anya looked up. "Sometimes I cry when I'm alone. Sometimes I wonder if I'm good enough. And sometimes I wish I could be invisible just for one day." Anya blinked. "You do?" Kamala nodded. "But then I remember what my mother told me." She leaned closer and whispered, "Don't let anyone make you smaller, just because they're loud. Be soft if you want, but never be silent." After class, Kamala asked the teacher to gather all the students in the courtyard. She stood in front of them and said, "I was told there's been teasing here, name-calling, whispering about people's skin, their hair, their voices." The children looked around. Guilty. Kamala didn't scold. She told a story about a girl who was called Coconut because she was brown on the outside, white on the inside. A girl who was told she was too loud, then too quiet, then too bold, then too shy. She didn't fit into their boxers, Kamala said, so they tried to break her, but she chose something else. She chose to build her own room, where her skin was power, where her voice was music, and where her silence still held meaning. The children listened closely. Some of them lowered their heads. Some had tears in their eyes. Later, before leaving, Kamala sat again with Anya in the hallway. She took out a small silver chain from her purse. A tiny bird hung at the end of it. "This is for you," she said. Nya gasped. "But why?" Kamala smiled. "Because you remind me of a bird. Small, yes, but strong, free, and too beautiful to keep in a cage." Anya held the chain tightly. "Will they stop teasing me now?" Kamala paused. "Maybe, maybe not. But you don't need them to stop." Anya looked confused. "Why not?" Kamala answered. "Because the day you stop caring about their noise is the day you start hearing your own voice." A photo of Kamala sitting with Anya quietly went viral. No press release. No PR stunt. Just a moment caught by a teacher's phone. A vice president sitting on a classroom floor, face soft, eyes kind, holding the hand of a lonely girl. The caption read, "Grace is not loud. Grace sits beside you, listens, and reminds you who you are." In the coming days, Kamala received hundreds of letters. From mothers, from bullied kids, from teachers who had lost hope. Each one said the same thing. "You didn't give a speech. You gave us a mirror." Back in her office, Alina walked in. "Ma'am, something strange is happening." Kamala looked up. "What now?" Ryan Blake posted a message online. Kamala raised an eyebrow. "He's still talking." Alina nodded. "He said he wants to meet you. Privately." Kamala stayed silent, then whispered, "Why would the man who tried to humiliate me now want to sit at my table?" Alina didn't answer, because even she didn't know that something bigger was coming. Something that could end Kamala's journey, or take it somewhere no one expected. It started with one message. Short, direct, unexpected. From Ryan Blake to Vice President Kamala Harris. Subject: a conversation. Madam Vice President, I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I request a private meeting. No press, no politics. Just two people. I believe this conversation may help more than it hurts. Alina stared at the email for a long time. Kamala was in her office, reading briefing papers. The light through the window was soft, but the silence was heavy. Ma'am, Alina said carefully, he emailed you. Kamala looked up who Ryan Blake. Kamala's eyes didn't change. What does he want? Alina read the message out loud. Kamala didn't respond at first. She closed the folder on her desk, stood up, and walked to the window. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then finally, she whispered, schedule it. Alina blinked. You want to meet him? Yes. But after everything he's done? Kamala turned, her eyes calm but focused. If my voice can make a difference in a crowd, maybe my silence can make a difference in a room. 2 days later, they met at a private building in D.C. No cameras, no microphones, just 2 chairs, 1 table. Ryan walked in first. Clean suit, nervous smile. Kamala entered moments later. Steady steps, unreadable face. They sat across from each other for a full minute. Neither spoke. Then Ryan finally broke the silence. Thank you for coming. Kamala nodded once. Why did you call me here? He looked down, then looked back at her with tired eyes. Because I need to tell the truth, and I don't know how to do that, unless I start with you. What Ryan said next shocked Kamala, and changed everything. He told her about the real reason behind his attack at the summit. It wasn't personal. Not really, he said. It was fear. Kamala raised an eyebrow. Fear, Ryan sighed. I'm a rich white man in a changing world. For years, people listened when I spoke. Now they listen to people like you. Kamala didn't flinch. Ryan continued, and I hated that. I didn't want to be forgotten. So I thought, if I could tear you down, maybe I'd feel powerful again. He paused, but I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow. Kamala finally spoke, and now, Ryan swallowed. Now, I want to fix it. He leaned forward. I want to fund a national program, free education for girls of color in tech. I want to name it after someone strong, someone they can look up to. Kamala stayed silent. Then Ryan added, I want to name it after you. The room froze. Kamala didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. Instead, she asked one simple question. Why? Ryan's voice broke for the first time. Because my daughter asked me if I hated you. He looked down at the table. She said, Daddy, why do you always say mean things about the lady who looks like me? Kamala's eyes softened. Just slightly, Ryan finished. I don't want her to grow up thinking power has to be loud, or white, or male. The next day, news exploded. Kamala Harris meets with Ryan Blake in secret. What does it mean? Enemies turn allies. Blake announces $100 million fund for girls in tech, named after Kamala Harris. Social media was on fire. Some people called it fake, others called it growth, but most simply said, this is what happens when grace meets guilt, and something better is born. A video of Kamala speaking to a young crowd at a local event was clipped and shared widely. In it, she said, it's easy to hate in a room full of people. It's hard to understand in a room with just one chair. But change doesn't happen when we clap back. It happens when we sit down and listen. It was shared by celebrities, teachers, politicians, teenagers, even critics. But not everyone was happy. That same night, a headline appeared on a known opposition blog. Kamala sells out, meets her own enemy for PR. A video clip was shared of Kamala shaking Ryan's hand. The angle made it look cold, calculated, like a deal, not a decision. Angry voices rose again. Some said, she's too soft. Others said, why give him a second chance? Even some of Kamala's supporters were confused. Was this trust, or was this politics? Back at her office, Alina showed her the comments. Kamala read them silently. Alina looked nervous. Ma'am, maybe we should respond. Explain everything. Kamala shook her head gently. No. But Kamala raised her hand. I know what I did, and I know why I did it. She looked up, and I'm not afraid of a storm. I've stood in one my whole life. That night, Kamala sat on the roof of her building, looking at the stars. She remembered something her mother once said. If you spend your life explaining yourself to noise, you'll never hear your own music. She closed her eyes and smiled. The next morning, a surprise came. A letter. No name on the envelope. Inside, a short note. I watched the full video. I showed it to my daughter. She wants to be like you now. Not because you shouted, but because you didn't. Kamala held the letter close, because sometimes the smallest voice means the most. The celebration was still fresh. People across the country were talking about it. Kamala Harris and Ryan Blake, once bitter enemies, had sat together, talked with respect, and made something good. A $100 million program to help young girls from underprivileged communities learn technology, named in Kamala's honor, funded by Ryan Blake, powered by Grace. It looked like a happy ending, but behind that curtain of smiles, someone was still angry, and that someone was watching closely. Her name was Celeste Morgan. She had once worked as Kamala's communications advisor, sharp, brilliant, tough. But a year ago she had left quietly. No media attention, no drama, at least. That's what everyone thought. But Celeste had left with something dangerous. Something Kamala had forgotten existed. Celeste sat alone in her apartment, lights dim, coffee cold. On her screen was a file titled, K. Harris Internal, May 2022. It was an old recording, a closed-door conversation between Kamala and 3 staff members. In it, Kamala was tired, frustrated. She said things she hadn't meant for the public to hear. Sometimes, I wonder if any of this even matters. People don't want truth. They want performance. Maybe I should just smile and let the lies win. It was a private venting moment. Pain, not policy. Emotion, not weakness. But taken out of context, it could be twisted, turned against her, and Celeste knew it. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a journalist. Still have that clip? Celeste stared at the screen. She didn't respond, not yet. Instead, she opened her old journal, page after page of notes, times she was overlooked, moments she felt invisible in Kamala's world. She smiled at everyone, but barely noticed me. I wrote this speech, but she got the praise. One day, they'll see what I saw. She wasn't driven by politics anymore. She was driven by something darker. Hurt. Back at the vice president's office. Things were calm for once. Alina brought good news, ma'am. Your video about the Tech Girls program crossed 12 million views in 24 hours. Kamala smiled. Let's hope the girls see it, not just the adults. She leaned back, closing her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt something rare, peace. But that peace was about to break. Celeste met with the journalist that night, in a coffee shop far from downtown. She handed over a USB. The reporter raised an eyebrow. You sure about this? Celeste nodded. It's the truth, she said. They deserve to hear it. The reporter asked one more question. What do you want out of this? Celeste looked outside, then said quietly, just to be heard. The next morning, chaos returned. News broke at 8:47 a.m. Private Kamala recording leaked. Is the VP losing faith in America? News channels ran the audio clip on repeat. Only the harshest part. Maybe I should just smile and let the lies win. Social media exploded. Supporters were confused. Haters rejoiced. Old enemies came out of hiding. She finally admits it. One said, she's tired. She's fake. Step down if you can't handle it. It was loud, ugly, and very, very fast. Alina rushed into Kamala's office, panic on her face. Ma'am, I heard, Kamala said calmly. She was already listening to the audio. Then she paused it. Alina asked, what do we do? Kamala stayed silent for a long time. Then she said, we don't run, we don't shout, we explain with truth, not fear. Alina looked unsure, but the media. Kamala stood up. If they're going to hear my pain, they'll hear all of it. That evening Kamala went live. No script, no filter. Just a simple camera. She looked directly into the lens and spoke. A private moment of frustration was shared today without my consent. And yes, I said those words. Not because I don't believe in this country, but because I believe in it so deeply. It hurts when it doesn't live up to its promise. She took a breath. Leaders are not superheroes. We bleed, we break, we cry, but we don't give up. And we don't fake smiles just to stay likable. She ended with, I'd rather be real and doubted than fake and praised. The video broke the internet again, but this time, differently. People watched, listened, understood, and then they responded. A teacher wrote, she didn't lose faith. She told the truth. A student wrote, thank you for saying what we all feel sometimes. A mother posted, strong women feel tired too. That doesn't make them weak, that makes them real. But Celeste didn't expect that. She had thought the leak would destroy Kamala. Instead, it brought more people to her side. Celeste sat in silence, watching her plan fail, until her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked up. The voice on the other side said, you wanted attention. You're about to get it. Later that night, Kamala received a strange package. No name, no return address. Inside, printed screenshots of internal staff emails, her schedule, travel details, team chat logs. Nothing illegal, but it was clear someone was watching. Someone who wanted more than to leak a clip. They wanted to break her from the inside. Kamala called an emergency meeting with her inner circle. We have a mole, she said calmly. Alina nodded. But why now? Kamala looked down at the screenshots, then whispered, because when you rise with grace, someone always tries to drag you back down with dirt. Rain tapped gently on the windows of the vice president's office. The sky was gray. The mood inside the room was heavy. Kamala stood quietly, staring at the package that had arrived the night before. Screenshots of her schedule, staff messages, and sensitive internal details. Nothing dangerous, but all very real. Someone was clearly watching her, and someone close had let them in. Her inner circle sat around the table. Alina, 2 senior advisors, and a security official. No one spoke, at first. Then Alina finally said, it's someone on the inside, ma'am. There's no other way these things got out. Kamala nodded slowly. Then we find out who, quietly. We don't accuse, we observe. Outside that private meeting room, something very different was happening. Across the country, Americans were standing up for her. Young people, teachers, single mothers, civil rights activists, people of every kind. Her raw video response to the leaked audio had touched hearts. She didn't pretend to be perfect. She showed the country what it meant to be human. A trending hashtag began to grow. Hashtag still with her in schools. Girls wrote essays titled, "Why Kamala Makes Me Brave." In a factory in Detroit, workers painted her quote on a wall. "I'd rather be real and doubted than fake and praised." Even celebrities, who once stayed silent, now tweeted in her support. She leads with truth. She teaches us strength isn't about noise, it's about grace. We need more leaders like her. But Kamala didn't celebrate. She stayed. Focused. She met with her team, checked security logs, reviewed emails. Still, no clear sign of the mole, until one afternoon, a name came up. Jordan. The young man who had once leaked the first video, and who Kamala had forgiven. He had been seen visiting a shared co-working space where a known political blogger had been meeting with sources. Alina brought it up gently. "Ma'am, I know you forgave him," but Kamala stopped her. "I still do," she said, "but forgiveness doesn't mean blind trust." She called Jordan into her office. He walked in slowly. His face looked tired, nervous. Kamala gestured to the chair across from her. He sat down without speaking. She placed the screenshots in front of him. "Do you know anything about these?" she asked gently. Jordan looked hurt. "No," he said quickly. "I swear I wouldn't do that again." Kamala studied his face, then leaned back in her chair. "I want to believe you," she said softly, "but I also need to protect the people who believe in me." Jordan nodded slowly. "I understand." And something about his tone felt honest. Still, Kamala had to be sure. She ordered a quiet audit of system logins. No one was above it, not even the kindest face in the room. The next day, another surprise. Ryan Blake requested a second meeting. Alina was hesitant. "Should we trust him again?" Kamala replied. "Trust? No, but listen. Always." This time, they met in a public cafe. No private room, no secrets. Ryan sat across from Kamala, with a serious expression. He slid a file across the table. "This is from an old friend of mine, used to be involved in dirty political work. He owed me a favor." Kamala opened the file. Inside, screenshots, messages, bank deposits, evidence. Someone inside her team had been selling information, not to the press, but to a high-level political donor group, a group that had made it their mission to ruin Kamala's reputation before the next election. Kamala turned the page, and her heart sank. At the bottom of the document was a name, Celeste Morgan. Alina was shocked. "She used to be one of us." Kamala stayed silent. She remembered Celeste, clearly sharp, quiet, loyal, or so she thought. "Why would she do this?" Alina asked. Kamala looked down, hurt, jealousy, maybe even feeling invisible. She shook her head. "We don't always break because we're weak. Sometimes we break because we were never heard." But now, the truth was in her hands. Celeste had been leaking info for months, and she had helped one more person still inside. Kamala made a decision. She would not let this play out in secret anymore. That night, she went live again, this time from her office. She spoke clearly. "I have been targeted, not by strangers, but by people I once worked with. Trusted, and I want to say this. No matter how much they try to shake me, I will not fall." She continued. "This isn't just about me. This is about every woman who dares to lead with softness. Every girl who rises through hate and keeps rising." She finished with, "You can throw lies at me, you can throw shame. But the truth walks with me, and I will not stop walking." Millions watched. Tears rolled down cheeks. A teacher in Alabama paused her class to play the full video. A bus driver in New York played the audio over the intercom. And on the sidewalk outside Kamala's office, people gathered holding candles, signs, and one message written everywhere. "Truth walks with her." But the fight wasn't over yet. Celeste was still in hiding, and whoever was helping her from inside hadn't been found. Kamala knew the final test was coming. It would not be a question of politics anymore, it would be a question of character. And so, as the city slept and the world scrolled, Kamala stood at her office window, alone again. But not lonely, because this time, the voices weren't just screaming at her, they were standing with her. It was early morning. Washington was still quiet. The streets were empty. But inside the vice president's office, something was shifting. Kamala Harris stood by the window, her reflection soft in the glass. She was calm, but alert, like someone waiting for the final piece of a puzzle to fall into place. The air felt heavier today, because she knew the last betrayal was near. Alina entered with a file in her hands and worry in her eyes. "Ma'am," she said, "we have the final report." Kamala nodded. "Who was it?" Alina hesitated for just a second, then whispered, "It wasn't Jordan. It wasn't even Celeste who leaked the last 2 emails." She paused. "It was Malcolm." Silence fell. Malcolm had been with Kamala since the early campaign days. Her speechwriter, her trusted voice behind the scenes. The one who always said, "Let's make it feel real." Kamala closed her eyes for a moment. "I trusted him," she said softly. Alina looked down. "He was feeding info to Celeste for months. He said he didn't want to hurt you. He just didn't want to be forgotten." Later that afternoon, Kamala called Malcolm into her office. He walked in nervously, trying to smile. Kamala didn't stand up. She didn't yell. She didn't show anger. She simply asked, "Why?" Malcolm lowered his head. "I thought I mattered once. In the beginning, I was in every room. Then the team grew. You got busier, I got pushed back. I felt invisible." Kamala listened quietly. "I didn't leak anything harmful," he said quickly. "Just small details. Just things to make me feel important again." Her voice was calm but firm. "You betrayed my trust, Malcolm. That wasn't small. That was everything." She dismissed him without drama. There were no headlines that day. No reporters waiting at the door. Just a quiet end. And in that quiet, something inside Kamala felt heavier, but cleaner. That night, Kamala sat in a small community hall in Georgia. No suit, no cameras, just people, women, young girls. Parents thought the crowd had gathered not for a speech, but for a conversation. Kamala sat in a circle with them. She told them the truth about betrayal, about pain, about standing back up. And then a teenage girl in the crowd raised her hand and asked, "Ma'am, how do you trust again?" After someone breaks you, the room fell silent. Kamala took a deep breath. Then she said, "Because I don't trust people based on their silence. I trust them based on how they handle my truth." The answer echoed across the room and across the internet. Someone had filmed it quietly. By morning, the clip had gone viral again, not because Kamala looked powerful, but because she looked real. The next day, the final report about Celeste and Malcolm was made public. Kamala insisted on transparency. "I won't hide other people's wrongs just to protect my image," she said. "If I ask the country to believe in me, they deserve to see the full picture." Most politicians would have buried the story. She didn't. And that changed everything. Support poured in like a river, not from big media companies, but from ordinary people. A waitress in Texas posted, "She told the truth even when it hurt her. That's my kind of leader." A father in Oregon wrote, "I've never voted for her before. I will now." A young poet from Chicago shared, "Her voice is not thunder. It's rain, quiet, healing, necessary." Meanwhile, Celeste finally spoke publicly. In an interview, she said, "I thought leaking that recording would destroy her. Instead, it showed me who she really was. And now I understand. I didn't need her to fail to feel seen. I just needed to stop hiding behind her shadow." In the weeks that followed, Kamala launched the Truth Table Project, a series of open community talks where leaders sat with the people. No podium, no script, no walls. Just chairs in a circle. Truth, not theater. And in every city she visited, people came not to be impressed, but to be heard. One day, during a visit to a small high school in Ohio, a young boy asked her something simple but deep. "Miss Kamala, do you still cry sometimes?" She smiled and said, "Yes, not because I'm weak, but because I care. And when you care about people, the pain doesn't bounce off you, it lives with you." That boy hugged her afterward. His teacher said it was the first time he ever spoke in front of a crowd. By the end of the year, Kamala's approval ratings had reached new heights. Not because she shouted louder than anyone else, but because she whispered something real in a world full of noise. And in her final public message that season, she stood under the open sky and said, "I was nearly broken this year, not by hate, but by the quiet kind of betrayal that comes with a smile. But I'm still here, still walking. And I want every young girl to know, you can lead with kindness, you can stand with truth, you can cry and still be the strongest person in the room." The crowd stood in silence, then erupted in applause, because this was no longer just about politics. This was about every person who had ever been underestimated, every woman who had ever been told she was too emotional, every voice that had been silenced by louder ones. Kamala didn't just survive the attacks, she turned them into a platform of purpose. Her final line before stepping off the stage: simple, powerful, real. "I wasn't made to be liked. I was made to be honest, and honesty will always find its way home."